Good evening, guys. It's been a little while, but welcome back to Pontificating with Pete. I have said before that I do want to make this more consistent. What the hell that was? Yeah, well, as you can see, technical difficulties right off the bat. It has been a little while since I've done this, but a lot of it is just scheduling purposes. It's not for a lack of wanting to be here and talk to you guys. It's amazing how two shows can really take up a lot of time and ends up, kind of putting you in a situation where, you got to do the clips, you got to get everything set. And remember, we're doing this for fun. We are not doing this because we're making a boatload of money. But if you are here, make sure that you do hit that like button, make sure that you are subscribed, make sure that you share, because we want to try to get this out to as many people as possible. It is important that, we get the word out. You can't look at what happened over the weekend specifically with, I don't know what you call the DNC and what business they're conducting at this point. As Jen has pointed out many a times, and I agree with her for the most part, that we basically just have to stop talking about the Democratic Party altogether. What they have shown time and again is that they have absolutely no interest whatsoever in being any type, forget an opposition party or a party for working people. I don't know what they are, because the person that they voted in, and we're going to get to Ken Martin, we're also going to get to Ben Weichler as well, and just the complete and utter defeat of the party. Yes, they did have an election. And of course, they did it under the cover of night. They don't want you to know that it's going on. You would think that they would care a little bit more about who's actually running the show for the foreseeable future. I believe they do this election every 4 years, I think. Something along those lines. I could be wrong. Maybe it does end up happening a little bit more frequently. But the DNC and the Democratic Party as a whole is proving that the system will collapse. It's simply inevitable. This cannot be salvaged under any circumstances. And I appreciate their elasticity in ensuring that it does happen. They are doing absolutely nothing to dispel the notion that the party is dead on arrival. It is. But that they're at a point where they're willing to basically just take a nosedive. That's what it feels like. It feels like they're ready to just say, fuck it. We'll just get whatever money we can for however long we can get it, and away we go. And from there, just kind of assume that let me see. I don't want to get into Gaza. You all can do that one off. I'm waiting to hear back from our esteemed guest. Give me 1 second. Times we're going on this other show at 8:45, not 9:45. So, what time is it right now? I think we did get our times messed up. I hate when this happens, and this is the whole thing about doing the live show. Then I guess I'm flying solo. It's 8. Let me see. You mean, so it could just be a few minutes. So give me a break on that. Is that a joke? Is that really who got picked? Welcome to 13 months and counting, Tony. The Democrats have no platform, right? I would say that that's a fairly accurate statement. This, to me, is the embodiment of the problem here. Look, I don't know David personally. Obviously, we lived in the same area in South Florida. But this is just kind of a reflection of, the party wants to get younger, but not younger in the sense of who's going to be fighting for working people. No. And I also don't think it's in accordance with what the DNC wants to do, I don't believe that this is actually the direction that they were planning on going in, simply because of what outgoing chair Jamie Harrison suggested in terms of it's got to be one man, one woman, one non-binary, and all that shit. This to me does not surprise me, because again, David Hogue is an affluent kid. He's he lived in or may still live. I don't know for sure if he does or not. But he lived Parkland. Part of the reason why the whole school shooting at Parkland was such a big deal was because it is such an affluent community. Most people know Boca Raton. Well, Parkland is pretty much Boca Raton in a lot of ways. And so when that happened, it was considered a non-starter, that we simply cannot have violence in affluent communities. That's not allowed. And so Hogue got ushered right to the front of the line, and he has been a fixture for a very long time. And now he's going to take reins of power. The affluent South Floridian who went to Harvard is going to be in charge, apparently, of the vice chair of the DNC. So it's this tokenism of we're getting younger, but we're getting younger in the affluent way. That doesn't solve any problems. Maneuvering your way into this sort of position where, I would say that that's probably the angle that they're going for. But remember, the party has no intention of changing. They're not going to change. And the reason I know that they're not going to change is because they've shown time and again that money is what defines them above everything else. And the way that they sidestep any scrutiny is they always mask it in front of identity. Again, I'm choosing my words carefully because I don't have any patience for these types of people anymore. I just don't. The people who are truly vulnerable are ones that will never have to suffer. Or I should say that the ones who pretend like this is a big deal are ones that will never have to suffer in a way that, let's say working class people will. If the goal of the DNC is to win elections, then the party has done a really crappy job of it. And it shouldn't come as any surprise because remember, if you want to talk about a true DEI hire, then that's Jamie Harrison, a gay black man from South Carolina, who's the head of the DNC for a number of years. This is coming off the back of a senatorial campaign in South Carolina that he ran against Lindsey Graham and blew away $40 million to lose by over 20 points. Then he gets hired as the DNC chair. Hey, you're a pretty big loser, but you have identity in your corner. Let's give you a job. Let's give you I don't know if it's the most important job in the Democratic Party establishment, but it's certainly very important. So they gave him the job. And boy, did they give it to him. He oversaw an even greater fall from grace for the Democrats. But they've been falling from grace for a very long time. It's kind of amazing that really, ever since Wasserman Schultz was the DNC chair, the party has just been fading into obscurity. Like totally. It just fades and fades and fades and fades. Here are the facts. Remember when Tom came on the stage and was talking about how we're going to make it better? Well, of all the things that one can talk about at the DNC convention, this is what Jamie Harrison thought was most important.
Specify that when we have a gender non-binary candidate or officer, the non-binary individual is counted as neither male nor female, and the remaining 6 offices must be gender balanced. With the results of the previous 4 elections, our elected officers are currently 2 male and 2 female.
Why does this matter? Why is this the thing that you're looking for? This is simply, again, it's not a meritocracy. It's buffoonery. And the idea that you are going to put all of these pronouns in the corner, who is this appealing to exactly? That's what I want to know. Who is this supposed to appeal to? Don't look at me. You know I don't have anything to do with this shit. I'm just trying to look at it from Jen's perspective, and that is, how do we usher more and more people away from the Democratic Party? How do we show them that the only way out of this is through a labor movement that is nonpartisan? It's that simple. And it will free your mind, and the rest will follow.
In order to be gender balanced, we must elect one male, one female, and one person of any gender. So again,
because if we don't do that, we can't possibly get any shit done. And you damn right I am. But don't ever call me cis. Just say I'm a white guy. That's it. I don't need to be referred to as straight. I know I'm straight. I don't need to be referred to as cis. I don't give a fuck what that means. I am white, but who cares? I'm a guy. That's what I am. Want to call me a male? Fine. But even I think all of this is ridiculous. I thought it was ridiculous from jump. And I've been trying to explain to people that it's ridiculous from jump. And I've had to deal with these mentally unstable individuals a time or two when Jen was running for Congress. I mean, you want to talk about mentally unstable people? That's who makes a big deal about shit like this. People that have their own issues and they're trying to find a way that they can, I don't even know what you would call it. Mass personality disorder, etc. Absolute insanity.
this is what we have to do for this vice chair race. We have to elect one male, one female, and one person of any gender. To ensure our process accounts for male, female, and non-binary candidates, we conferred with our RBC co-chair, our LGBT caucus co-chair, and others to ensure that the process is inclusive and meets the gender balance requirements in our rules. To do this, our process will be slightly different than the one outlined to you earlier this week, but I hope you will see that in practice it is simple and transparent. The order of balloting is designed to ensure equal access to the ballot, regardless of gender identity. As we must elect a candidate of any gender as well as one male and one female vice chair, we will first ask members to elect a candidate of any gender on the first ballot. Any candidate, male, female, and non-binary, can be elected on that ballot. After a candidate is elected on the first ballot, we'll have one officer of the three, so then we will know which position is filled of the one male, one female, and one vice chair of any gender. Our second ballot would also be for a candidate of any gender. Then our third ballot will be the third position that is remaining based on the two results. Either a male candidate if a candidate that is not male has not been elected, or a female candidate if a female has not been elected.
Well, I tell you, I guess if you're going to be remembered for anything in terms of being a complete and utter loser, well, this is one hell of a way to go out. Forget the fact that we have no health care. Forget the fact that the water's contaminated. Forget the fact we have endless war. Forget the fact that we don't have a living wage. Forget the fact that there is no, and I hate the word resistance, so I will say opposition. There is no opposition to Trump. None. And this is what you're worried about? They're telling you clear as day that they will not change. They have no intention of doing it. They are daring you to leave. So leave. You'll feel so much better if you do. Greatest leverage you can create is if you don't have to worry about this. And I don't know if I sent this to you, Colin, but I'm going to text it to you now. I sent a text earlier to Jen to show her this tweet that Ryan Grimm had put out. It's from Ken Klippenstein. So I'm going to text it to you now. I want to prop it up because this kind of speaks to, I mean, don't get me wrong. It's not that this race really mattered. It didn't. But it's a testament to just seeing whether or not there's any semblance of awareness of what's going on. You know, do they fully understand what they've gotten themselves into? Do they fully understand how bad things have gotten and how much worse they're going to get? I'm not 100% sure that they have. One of the two competitors, there was basically two individuals that were pretty far ahead in terms of who was most likely going to become the chair of the DNC. The first person was Ben Weichler, who is the chair of the Wisconsin Democratic Party. And then you have Ben Martin, who's the chair of the Minnesota Democratic Party. Ben Weichler, who was touting all of his wonderful endorsements, including getting financially backed by billionaire anti-labor fuckhead Reid Hoffman. But he decided to put this one out there. If I'm elected, we're going to begin an audit of every single DNC consulting contract on day one. Sunlight is the best disinfectant. It's time to eliminate grift and spend to win. Sunlight is the best disinfectant unless it's COVID. Am I right? All right, I'm just saying. But yes, you make a statement like this and you're finished. You are finished. Because what the Democratic Party has effectively become is a DC coastal elite consultant class grift. That's it. How do I get paid? If the ship's sinking, I'm looking for my life raft. And that life raft better involve some money. So that's how they're looking at it. Ben Weichler, well, he thought he had a pretty good chance of winning. Well, he didn't win. This is who won.
Good billionaires out there that have been with Democrats who share our values, and we will take their money, but we're not taking money from those bad billionaires.
Here, thank you, Joe Martin.
Would you like to hear that one more time?
Good billionaires out there that have been with Democrats who share our values, and we will take their money, but we're not taking money from those bad billionaires.
Here, thank
Am I right? Am I right? What are we talking about here? What is a good billionaire? What's a bad billionaire? Is a good billionaire one that donates to the Democrats but not the Republicans? Is it a billionaire that donates to both parties but more to the Democrats than the Republicans? Is it somebody that owns a consulting firm in D.C. and employs a lot of people in the Democratic Party? You tell me. What's the right answer? I'm not sure. I don't really care. But that smirk tells you all you need to know. The consultant class will be flushed with cash. The Democrats will continue to fall into obscurity. And I agree with you, Andrew. I support good things and I'm against bad things. I hope that his statement becomes a running joke for as long as humanly possible. I do. We're for the good. We're for the good billionaires. Not that we're for working people. Not that we're for ending corporate special interest control of the Democratic Party and politics in general. Not that we're for single payer. Not that we're for a living wage. Nothing. This is what we're for. We will not change at all. Losing to Donald Trump in 2 non-consecutive elections is not enough. We will take more humiliation. And they seem to love it. I would say that that's pretty accurate. Sometimes one can come up with an incredible idea the world over and could become super rich as a result. And billionaire status is certainly possible, however rare. But for the norm of a typical billionaire, not a chance. You have to be a ruthless bloodsucker in order to do it, especially if you didn't invent anything that becomes a worldwide phenomenon. There's simply no other way. What did Jeff Bezos discover? How to monopolize the shipping industry? So that's basically what he did. What did Elon do? Monopolized the electric car, which was out long before he came up with it. What did Mark Zuckerberg do? Well, he had an idea and he stole it from a whole bunch of people that were involved in the process. And he was always wealthy, but he didn't get wealthy until he started getting special government contracts for data mining. That's when he really got filthy rich. Bill Gates? Bill Gates stole the personal computer from Steve Jobs. And today he wants to control all of the farmland and everything you ingest in your body. You know, Tom Perez is the only person in the last almost 20 years. That's kind of amazing when you think about it. It's been almost 20 years since the Democrats have turned a net positive in an election cycle, and that was 2018. And they did win the presidency in 20, but they ended up losing seats. A lot of seats in the process of getting Biden over the finish line. And that's up for debate as well. The party is on a downward spiral that is not going to recover. They've made their choice and they're sticking with it. And I can respect that. I can respect that they're not going to change. No single individual can attribute enough to society to be worth 1,000 times more than any other human being. Well, again, as I said, everything's relative to a given circumstance. If somebody actually creates the home computer, for example, perfects it, and tens of millions of people want the product, that's an argument. But again, you're talking about true lightning in the bottle type of a situation. The rarest of rarities. It never happens. Hence why becoming this wealthy is simply impossible unless you cheat. And the way you cheat is you cheat workers. And we do this all the time. And that is a fair point. No single individual has. Which is why Gates did what he did, Zuckerberg did what he did, Bezos did what he did, and so on and so forth. And then there's also the lack of an inheritance tax or estate tax. Those things have been wiped away. People in very high places in society just continue to pass family wealth down without a nary a concern about whether or not the money is ever earned. It is simply given. Well, it's my family. I could do what I want. Okay, that's fine. You can give it to them. You will pay an inheritance tax. You didn't earn it. But there's a lot of people in wealthy positions who do not think that they have to earn anything, that everything is simply given, and that should be acceptable, that there is benevolence to their position in society, which is why a lot of times you simply can't fail. Exceptional marketing on their part to get people to stop insisting that it be paid. They call it the death tax. The GOP is great at messaging. Done a great job. That was George W. I've said George W. Bush is the worst president of my lifetime. I know Biden has given him one hell of a run for his money, but it's the Bush administration that did away with the death tax or the estate tax, depending on how you look at it. But that was a big part of it, guys. It's been a succession of things that has happened over the last 2 generations that have led us to this point where we don't really know for sure if our system is just going to completely collapse or if it will ultimately transform into something else. I'm not 100% sure. But what I do know is that the Democratic Party has shown time and time again that they are unwilling to evolve, change, nothing. They're not willing to, because it would mean that the financial gravy train has to end, and they will not give that up. Much like the billionaire class and the infrastructure that they control, you have to pry it from their cold, dead hands. There is no other way to do it. They will not give it up. So, thinking that you can resuscitate the Democratic Party, you can't do it. They have to admit defeat. You cannot go back to them. Find another way, as we have constantly put forward on our channel, that the only way forward is through a labor movement that is nonpartisan. The sooner we recognize that reality is the sooner we can start making the type of moves that we need to make. And if you all agree, then there is one hell of a lot of work ahead of us for the time being. And you know who really captured that sentiment very well the other night? Charles Barkley. Now, I've always been a fan of the Chuckster. I have a friend that is very friendly with him, thinks the world of him, great guy, says what's on his mind, but is never afraid to speak truth to power in a way that very few are willing to in his position. So here's what he said on Inside the NBA, I want to say 2 or 3 nights ago.
And also, I wish that people were smarter. Personally, I think these politicians, both parties suck. But I think they do a really good job of making us not like each other. America is not, racism exists, always has, and always will. Unfortunately, it's a disaster. But what America really has become is rich people against poor people.
That's it. And there are millions of people that watch Inside the NBA. There are millions of people that are familiar with Charles and his message and how he's been on TV with Ernie Johnson, Kenny Smith, and Shaq for many, many years. And he's always toyed with the idea of running for office. He once toyed with the idea of running for governor of Alabama, although he was going to potentially do it as a Democrat, and he would have failed miserably. It is what it is. I do believe that Chuck knows a lot of good stuff related to politics. I think his intentions are for the betterment of people, which is not something you can generally say for a lot of these guys. We've seen how selfish a lot of these athletes are, especially somebody like LeBron. But Chuck really gets it. And for that, I appreciate him saying what needs to be said, that it's both sides. It's not one side. And that it is just one big grift. But the fact that he said it's a class war, he going to get a talking to. At this point, I don't know how much Ted Turner really cares, but there's no question that what he's saying is right.
And I wish people would understand that politicians do a good job of making us fight with each other, but it's really rich people against poor people. They try to make it about black, white, immigration, homosexuality, and all these different things. But what it is rich people making poor people not like each other. And until we address that, we're never going to be successful.
Couldn't have said it better. You know, Chuck would do he's the type of guy that would probably do really well with a podcast if he just wanted to go with it and not care about, what anybody thinks. It's not that he ever really did. He's always been somebody who just says what's on his mind. He's not always right, but he's right a lot. And that's sometimes more than enough. be critical, but fair. And if the goal here is to ultimately transform politics into service, which is what it sounds like he's fighting for, the service we provide is whether or not people are willing to recognize that our biggest problem is corporate special interests have controlled, dominated our system for quite some time. And that change needs to happen sooner rather than later. And I am extremely grateful for Chuck saying that. And I would assume a lot of others would be as well. So kudos to him in doing the right thing. Now, one of the bigger problems that we saw recently, and I wanted to address this, and I'm going to be putting out a post for us tomorrow related to Bernie and Bobby Kennedy. If we were living in a time where the powers that be truly understand the magnitude of the circumstances we're living in right now, Bernie Sanders and RFK Jr. would be joining forces in some capacity. They would be looking to coalesce and figure out how to make things work in areas that they agree on, not just trying to bury Bobby because people disagree with him on vaccines. Then they're turning it around and going after Bernie because he received donations from people who worked in the pharmaceutical and private insurance industry. That to me is a travesty considering our situation. So the question is, what can be done? This is Bernie making a big deal out of nothing during the hearings at the end of last week.
Started a group called the Children's Health Defense. You're the originator. Right now, as I understand it, on their website, they are selling what's called onesies. These are little things, clothing for babies. One of them is titled Unvaxxed, Unafraid. Next one, and they're sold for $26 a piece, by the way. Next one is No Vax, No Problem. Now, you're coming before this committee and you say you're pro-vaccine. Just want to ask some questions. And yet your organization is making money selling a child's product to parents for $26, which casts fundamental doubt on the usefulness of vaccines.
Some people are going to be unvaccinated, Bernie Sanders. This has been a known thing for generations. This is not new. This has always been a thing. There's a reason why people homeschool their kids. Some people do not want to participate in collectivism. Call it whatever you want to call it. But there will always be people that feel this way. The fact that Bernie feels that this is the hill he wants to die on, rather than saying, what is it going to take for us to work together? There's also something to be said about the fact that Bernie wants to go after RFK on single-payer healthcare, which I would agree is a valid point because I support single-payer healthcare. Jen does. You all know what we stand on that issue. But where does colleagues stand? Where do they stand? They don't support it. I don't see Bernie calling them out. And they're in a pretty powerful position as well, much more powerful in terms of being able to enact policy regarding healthcare than anything Bobby is capable of doing. If you ask me, that's a pretty big deal. But this is what Bernie wants to spend his time on. Why would he give a fuck about showboating for the cameras? I don't understand. He doesn't have much time left. And the idea that this is what he wants to waste it on is a huge disappointment for all of us that have been supporting him for a very long time. But he apparently has a little bit more to say.
Can you tell us now that you will, now that you are pro-vaccine, that you're going to have your organization take these products off the market?
Senator, I have no power over that organization. I'm not part of it. I resigned from the board.
Yeah, that was just a few months ago. You founded that You certainly have power. You can make that call. Are you supportive of this?
I've had nothing to do with
Are you
leadership.
supportive of these onesies?
I'm supportive of vaccines.
Are you supportive of this clothing, which is militantly anti-vaccine?
I am.
I don't know what purpose this serves. I honestly don't. And this showmanship is so fucking stupid. And the reason I'm criticizing Bernie is because I don't give a fuck what Elizabeth Warren does. I don't give a fuck what Senator Bennett does or Senator Tillis. Who cares? They're all scum suckers. They don't stand for anything other than corporate special interests and their own fucking useless careers. But Bernie is supposed to stand for something. He always has. But he's going down this road. For what purpose? And there is hypocrisy to Bobby. He's not perfect. There's tons of things I don't agree with. That doesn't mean he doesn't have good points. Ray, Bernie has accepted donations from people who work in big pharma and private insurance. There is a difference. It's not corporate special interest money. It's all within the guidelines of what you can and what you cannot accept. And that is the distinction. And this is where Bobby is wrong and are his supporters. The knock on Bernie Sanders that he, for some reason, is a shill for private insurance and big pharma, you got to come up with a better talking point. How about you just say that Bernie's a coward who won't stand up to the people who have fucked him over for a decade? That's actually something that would land. And people would be like, nah, you're kind of right. Bernie's always been a pushover for the Democratic Party establishment. He has had many an opportunity to stand up to them, and he doesn't take it, even though he could have had millions of people behind him backing him up. He didn't do it. What purpose does that serve? You should be talking about the fact that our food is poisoned, that we do not have any semblance of a health care system, because if we did, people would be a lot less vaccine skeptic. Why? Because the profit motive would be removed. Then you don't have to question whether people will be wasting their time, unless you think that it's just run by a bunch of psychopaths that want people to die from taking a vaccination. I think people have every right to be vaccine skeptical. I'm vaccine skeptical, and I've been vaccinated. Because there is a for-profit motive. Now, I'm not saying that Bobby is some crusader for better healthcare in the United States. He's an extremely privileged person from a very dynastic family. But there's a part of him that I think does care. He has his mission. He wants to fight it. Considering where we are right now, I say give him a shot. But that's me. Other people might not agree, and that's okay. But this, to me, is such a waste of time, such a waste of effort and energy and resources. And Bernie knows better. For the love of God, it's almost like they've got something on him, and that's why he does this. Because it doesn't make sense.
Supportive of vaccines. I want good science, and I want to protect.
But you will not tell the organization you founded not to continue selling that product. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Senator Blackburn.
Thank you so much.
That's RFK Jr., Denise. And who do you want? Who's out there right now that's actually going to address the fact that we have poisoned food, that is talking about the fact that we have all different types of additives in our food supply that should not be there? That's what being the HHS secretary is supposed to be dealing with. the health crisis in our country. Yes, vaccines matter. He does not have the authority to stop people from getting vaccinations. So what's the real issue here? That's where we're heading. That's what we're going to end up with if we don't try to break through in some way, because we're in hell. I don't trust him either. Who do you trust? I don't even think I can trust Bernie fucking Sanders anymore. That's pretty low. One thing I am grateful for with Bobby Kennedy is that at least we're talking about the fact that our food is poison. That at least we're talking about. Do you ever read the labels of what goes into our food? You know what they say is the maximum amount of ingredients that should be in any type of food that isn't all natural? 6 maximum. Anything past that is very bad. There are food products out there that have 25 ingredients in them. Think about the products we sell in the United States that is illegal in Europe. Can't put it in food in Europe, sell the same product. Can't sell it here. Or can't sell it over there. Can sell it in the United States. That's the point. He's the only fucking person talking about this. So you want to get on him for the other kooky shit that he says? Yes, he says kooky shit. Well, guess what, Tony? The people in power who run big agriculture and big pharma, well, they don't want it out. They want people addicted. Why? Because it makes them fucking money. That's it. There is no grand conspiracy here. Everything that is done for the purpose of how much fucking blood out of a stone can I draw for the bottom line. That is it. There is no other conspiracy. There is no other alternative. Everything is related to money and power. It always has. It always will be. There you go. Imagine the fact that we have been living, especially since the 80s and 90s, of commercials promoting cereal. Cereal has got to be as bad as anything that we could possibly put into our bodies. And if that's not enough, we also, on top of the cereal, put cow's milk into that cereal that's loaded with 12 grams of sugar per cup. So, if you're having a well-balanced breakfast of Frosted Flakes or Frosted Mini Wheats, or who the fuck else knows what you're having, I can assure you that in the average serving of anywhere from 30 to 40 grams of sugar in one meal, that's really, really fucking bad. And that's just the sugar. That's not even getting into the wonderful chemicals that get thrown into these food products. And what gets thrown into them? Products that will addict you to them. I understand that you're scared, Denise. And I know a lot of people are too. And you should be scared. Because this is what happens when the empire starts to fall apart. It's been held together by shoestring for far too long. You know, that was the one thing about the Obamas that I really did appreciate. I couldn't stand Uncle Fester Ted Cruz giving Michelle Obama a hard time because she said that I want your kids to eat healthy. Who is she to tell our kids that they have to eat stuff? Well, here we are. And that was how many years ago? That had to be over 10 years ago at least, maybe more. It is an unfortunate set of circumstances that we've ended up here. But like Charles Barkley said just a little while ago, it doesn't matter who's in charge. It just matters that we keep each other at each other's throats, because that's what makes the most money. If we ever figured out that so many of these problems is easily correctable, if we just put our differences aside and recognize that this is a class war and nothing more, and that's it. Bobby Kennedy is not going to give us all of the answers. But think about this. If he's confirmed as HHS secretary, the light that will be shined on these issues will be brighter than anything you could possibly imagine. And that's a good thing. If we care enough about what goes into our food supply, then a hell of a lot of people are going to care even more about it if they feel that the person who's in charge of HHS is somehow kooky and crazy and is going to make it worse. Whatever lights the fire under people's asses to allow them to get healthier so we can push even harder for a single-payer healthcare system, then that's what we need to do. That's not his responsibility. That's Pete Hegseth's responsibility, and we sure as fuck know he ain't going to do anything to help the circumstance. Just like Trump is going to give Miriam Adelson exactly what she wants. Do any of you know that Miriam Adelson is the principal owner of the Dallas Mavericks NBA basketball team? You know, the team that just gave away their best player to the biggest market in the league for nothing? I can only hope that Luka Doncic said free Palestine on his way out the door. Maybe that's why he got traded. You never know. Even if he doesn't have a healthy diet, which apparently was one of the reasons he got moved. When it comes to eating healthy, I'm going to be 42 in a couple of months. High fat, high protein, low carb, low sugar. Exercise and get enough sleep and drink enough water. That's what you have to do. But for a lot of people, it's not easy. Being a savvy shopper is it can be challenging. And that's no guarantee either, because a lot of our water is not clean and not safe. Well, I hope those poochie poos keep you young, Chip. That much I hope. It's not all you need, Travers, but it's certainly a huge part of what you do need. We have finicky kids because, unfortunately, being a disciplinarian is not considered a way of parenting anymore. And that doesn't mean hitting your children, but that means being strong and firm. That is what you need to be. I was forever grateful that my grandfather was a disciplinarian with me, and I learned as much out of life from him as I did from either of my parents. And the funny thing is that my relationship with him didn't last very long. I didn't have a lot of years with him to really acquire all that knowledge. But in the years that I did have with him were as rich and fulfilling as any that I could have ever hoped for. We have an obligation to recognize what's in front of us right now, that the system is falling apart, that there are going to be people that are going to be tasked with responsibilities that most would think that is not the right person to be dealing with. We are an over-medicated, overindulged, weak culture. Yes, you should always get enough sleep. But most of our culture is not sleeping well. And that could be again. All those possibilities can happen again. They really can. But we have to stop being afraid. Oh, I don't, Thank you, Kat. And Jen's not right about much, but she is right about naps. I'll tell you why. Because the best thing that you can do for your body, if you're really exhausted, is to take a nap. Don't force yourself through it. Your body is telling you, I can't go forward. I need a recharge, even if it's for 30 minutes. When I worked at the New York Mets, my first job out of college, it was a 9 to 5 in the traditional sense that I had to be in an office, etc. I had 1 hour for lunch. It was a 9-hour day, 8:30 to 5:30, but I had 1 hour for lunch. You know what I did during that lunch? I ate for about 15 minutes and I slept for 45. That's what I did. And the second half of the day was always so much more productive because I got that energy boost and it was natural. And I would recommend that to anybody. But that's not the society we live in. We live in a society where you're not allowed to take any rest. You are just a cog in a machine and you have to keep making money for people that are worth $200 billion. That's your job. The higher up we go, the more we realize exactly what the problem is here. We're going to get to Tucker Carlson in a minute. But Sam, here's what you have to remember. I don't really care what his reasoning is, what angle he's trying to portray. All I care about is that Tucker Carlson is listened to by millions of people, particularly in conservative circles, and he's saying the right thing. This, to me, is more important than whatever the cover is that people are utilizing. Now, you could say that they're killing Christians, and because Tucker is Catholic and that's very important to him, so be it. I'm not going to hold it against him. If right is right, then that's it. Here's what Tucker had to say to Piers Morgan.
It's like if you commit enough killing, you will change people's behavior, including getting them to surrender. My only question is it worth it? And what are you becoming when you participate in it?
Yeah, but I think
that's a meaningful question that nobody addresses.
Yes,
like,
but
who am I? I'm a decent person. I'm an imperfect person. This is how Americans, I think, should think of themselves and mostly do. But I'm also a representative of an enlightened country, product of an enlightened civilization called Western civilization. And there are certain things I will not do, even if they benefit me. I'm not doing that because I'm not that guy. I don't kill children. I don't rape women. I don't send women into battle to defend me, which I guess we now do. That's wrong.
So you would condemn what Israel's done in Gaza, for example?
I don't want to be involved in it.
I mean, nearly 20,000 children are said to have died.
I don't
you condemn
think that is a...
By your criteria, you condemn it? Is it morally justified?
That is a calculation that Israel has to make. I don't want to have anything to do with that.
You have no view? No view?
It's hard to take a lecture from someone who just admitted that he hates Israel in every fiber of his body.
I never said.
You said that. You said that.
Now
on
you're
camera.
distracting.
No, I'm not distracting.
Yes, you are.
You're the one who said that.
You're now distracting.
You said, I hate Benjamin Netanyahu.
No, I didn't. I said I don't think he should be leader anymore.
You hate him. You with an irrational hatred that, I don't know where it comes from. I can't account for what's in your soul. I don't have an X-ray into what's deep inside you. But all you said was, I hate
I have no problem saying that I think Israel's response has gone way too far. Way too many civilians have been killed. What I'm surprised about is that you, having lectured me about the deaths of 8-year-olds, you don't want to morally condemn what Israel's done in Gaza. I'm curious as to why. By your criteria.
Yeah. My criteria apply solely, and this is a thread of consistency throughout my arguments here and everywhere for the last 20 years. They have to do with the behavior of the United States, which is my country. And it's been my family's country for hundreds of years. I pay my full taxes. I feel very vested. I'm a shareholder in my country. So its behavior matters greatly to me. I'm implicated in its behavior. And I don't want the United States to participate in things that are counter to its interests or counter to the values of Western civilization. Right. That's really simple. So other countries do all kinds of abominable things, including cannibalism, a lot, actually, and human sacrifice, a lot, actually. And, you know, okay, they're not my country. So I don't want the United States involved in anything that's morally indefensible or counter to its own interests. Period.
So Israel's dropping American bombs on Gaza, killing lots of children.
Do you think the deaths of? I'll tell you what I think.
Hang on.
Don't tell me what I think.
You think the killing of you think the killing of civilians is morally indefensible?
Let me tell you what I think.
So American bombs are being used to kill a lot of children and women in Gaza.
I hate that.
Is it morally?
Let me tell you.
Is it morally indefensible? Now you don't want to say?
I'm in the process of telling you.
Go on then.
Stand back. Let the flower bloom. Okay? Stop tending the garden, Piers. I hate the fact that civilians are killed with American weapons. I hate it.
Why didn't you just say that from the beginning, Tucker? You also have to remember that they're walking a very fine line because Trump is in the pocket of Miriam Adelson and the Israel lobby, and by that extension, AIPAC. This is a touchstone point that we will have to look back on, because I don't doubt for a second that Tucker just wants to let it fly. But as you can see, he's choosing his words very carefully. He had to tap dance around it. And good on Piers for not backing off, because Piers has always been a shill for Israel. And now all of a sudden, he's not a shill. He's trying to goad Tucker into saying what he knows Tucker really wants to say, but maybe is mindful of whether or not, if he says it, he's going to get eaten alive by the conservative right, led by Donald Trump. To that I say, what the fuck do you have to wait or hold on for at this point? You can't look around and not recognize how bad things are getting and how much worse they will get. Israel is going to drag us into the seventh circle of hell if we let them. They already have to a major degree. But it takes people like Tucker to step up and say, this shit has to stop. Because we sure as hell know that the liberal side of politics isn't going to do diddly squat. Not even a little. But Tucker has that type of influence. He got Trump to not bomb Syria. I remember it like it was yesterday. And that's when they really came after him. So say what needs to be said, Tucker. Just say it. Don't tap dance. Don't use the excuse of, I hate what the United States is doing to aid Israel. No, condemn Israel too. Don't say you hate that children are being mass murdered. Say that you hate that Israel is mass murdering children. There can be no exception. He's thinking about how this is going to be clipped, how people are going to perceive it, etc. Everyone believes that an empire can't fall. But history has shown that they always do. Always. It just depends on how long you think you can drag it out. But the sooner we do fall as an empire is the sooner we can actually start working on the things that we can do to improve our country, our culture, and our future.
I hate it in Ukraine. I hate it in Gaza. I hate it in the occupied territories, whatever we're calling them these days. I think in the specific case of Israel, we have been closely allied with the Israeli government, since the 1950s. We're actually instrumental in the creation of Israel, so since the late 40s.
Talk about a truth bomb. He's saying stuff that you're not supposed to say, but he's saying it. I mean, Tucker Carlson getting ahead of the curve on this issue that so many people don't want to talk about because of the political retribution that comes with it. But as I said, Tucker has FU money. So he doesn't have to placate this shit. It's up to him to decide what his fate will be pertaining to this. To that end, I'm not really sure. He can't even look Piers in the eye when he's saying it. And you know why he can't look Piers in the eye when he says it? Because he's thinking about what he's going to say next. He's not just letting it fly. He's still piercing his words carefully. But he knows the score. And you can tell that he does. As a Christian, I'm sure it burns him up terribly. Tucker's not perfect. He's had takes over the years I didn't agree with. He's had plenty of takes I do agree with. But I don't think Tucker's a bad guy. I think Sean Hannity's a bad guy. I think Lauren Ingram's a bad girl. There's a lot of people in conservative media that suck royally. But he's not one of them. There's something about Tucker that I just get the sense that he knows what's going on. And as somebody who has probably taken a lot of chances in my career because I am extremely anti-Israel at this point, very pro-Palestine, I have to make those choices. But as somebody who works in commercial real estate, I am given the luxury of deciding who I work with and who I don't. Other people don't have that luxury. They can't make that decision. There are people that are so embedded in this system and they are so financially dependent on being able to break bread with Israel. And that's why they don't say anything. As I've said, and will continue to say, it's always about money and power. Go check out Emily Austin and check out her background and how she got where she is. You know, when I met her, I thought she was like 30 years old. She's 21. No one gets into these positions unless they're interconnected in a very, very substantial way. Can't do it. It's not, no one gets there. There is a pecking order and few people get there. And the ones that do, they ride it for all it's worth. Because there's a lot of money to be had. There's a lot of prestige and power to be had. But if you fuck up just once and say the wrong thing, especially about Israel, you better believe it's over. And it will be over before you even have a chance to see it. It'll go like that. So let's finish this out before I bring in my wonderful guest.
And I think that there are times when our interests have aligned, and there are times, the transfer of military technology to China being one of them, where those interests diverge. I would very much appreciate an environment in the United States where Americans could speak openly about what their money is doing in a bunch of different foreign countries, including that one. And I think that we should reassess all our relationships, all our alliances with our allies on the basis of whether or not it's good for the United States on a bunch of different levels, economically, whether it's good for our internal politics, whether it's good for, our power abroad, et cetera, et cetera. And yes, more than, I really think that we need a much more honest conversation about our relationship with Israel. And I feel, if I can just say one thing and brag, I feel like I'm one of the only people in the United States who's not emotional on the topic. Everyone's so emotional about it. They hate Israel. They love Israel. It's like, I'm American, okay? I like Israel. I don't love any country other than my own. And I think we should have a rational conversation about this. And at this point, as you well know, we don't. So that's my actual position.
Yeah, look.
If you're intentionally killing civilians, you probably shouldn't beat your chest and brag about it. Maybe you can make the
I agree with that.
Maybe you make the case that we had to do it or whatever, but you should.
I agree.
You should weep, and that's evil, and you should just say it's evil. And
what is the point of weeping if you don't actually give a fuck? I would rather them just say what they think. This gets back to the whole problem with case system society. Now, obviously, it's different when it comes to Israel and Palestine because it's a blood oath, just like it's a blood oath between Pakistan and India and some other nations, as there has been over the many centuries, Mongolia and China. This isn't a new thing, but if we're evolving as a society, then we have to be honest about the fact that Israelis believe that because they are the chosen people, that they have carte blanche to do whatever the fuck they want and that they're better than everybody else. Well, you're seeing it in real time. That's what's happening. There is no denying this. Trump let it slip, although I'm not really sure Trump ever lets anything slip. I think he just doesn't care and says whatever he wants. And that's what scares the powers that be more than anything else, is that Trump will say things that are 1,000% the truth. That is not good for business. But Trump said as many as 700,000 Palestinians have been mass murdered. That's a genocide. It was a genocide at 100,000 people. 700,000 people? Remember, it was Trump who said it. So anyone who's out there saying, oh my God, you're fudging the numbers, you don't know what you're talking about. You know, Jen has been saying for the longest time, you have no idea how many people are going to get killed from this. You think there's any honest, first of all, Israel lies when their lips are moving. They are dropping hell from above all day, every day. And what the hell do you think is going to come of this? And that's not even addressing the famine and disease that has been permeated through the entire Gaza Strip for a year and a half. What do you think is going to happen? They're dying. Mass murder perpetrated by a genocidal state that should be dismantled.
I know it's really threatening to.
Is it evil?
Ben Shapiro to say that or whatever. But
is it evil
to kill civilians on purpose? Yeah, it is. I think it is.
Really?
Kids and children. Well, how is it not? Actually,
you're right. And Ben Shapiro is a fuckhead, evil piece of shit. And of course, he's a feminine. I'm not even going to say beta male. He's a feminine male who can't lift, whose wife is probably stronger than he is. And it's always people like that. It's always those type of men that you always have to look out for. It's weak men that are the most dangerous because they always feel that there is a way that they can prove how strong they are. And you know what they do? They have other people die on their behalf and they drop bombs on people that can't defend themselves. Candace Owens has balls, bigger balls than Ben Shapiro has, literally and figuratively. She was willing to get fired from the Daily Caller because she couldn't live with herself. Good for her. Good for Tucker. Piers just likes to, he'll say one thing 1 minute, he'll go in another direction the other minute. But what is being said here is very fucking important.
In a war?
Well, you can call it whatever you want. How is it right to kill women and children?
I didn't say, because I think there is a moral right behind you if you are literally...
To kill women and children?
Really? If there's a world war that threatens if it threatens the entire world, yes.
Some people killed your kids, like your 8-year-old? Like,
well,
how is
your own
that
children,
morally justifiable?
Well, because actually you have to, by your criteria...
It's disgusting.
Okay, so no war is morally justified.
I mean, I think it's pretty hard to justify. I mean, yeah, I'm
Any
sure,
war.
A pure defensive action, sure. But all I'm saying, look, it's all ugly. It's all hard to stomach. I've actually seen some of it up close. It's super ugly.
You can say that. You say you hate it.
May I finish?
The fact you quibble with it being morally justified.
To intentionally kill non-combatants, women and children, I think we can say that's wrong. In fact, I thought that was the thing we were fighting against.
You see how Piers plays along for a little while and then he just can't help himself? What the fuck is with the Brits? Like, there's like a portion of the British population that just fucking sucks royally. Like, they're all a bunch of Margaret Thatchers, and they have never been able to get out from under their Tory sentimentalities. Piers Morgan wears a maid's dress in his private life. He pours his little tea and his crumpets and enjoys himself. And look at me, I'm now talking like Russell Brand. All I can say is I am extremely proud of my Irish brethren who stood up for the Palestinians from day one. And fuck Conor McGregor for throwing our country under the bus. You're not even relevant anymore, dude. Yeah, you could probably take me in a fight, be it as it may, but you're washed up. And now you're simping for the Israel lobby and the Brits. As an Irishman, you should be fucking ashamed of yourself. Your own people don't want you no more. So don't even come around thinking you're going to get sympathy from us fellow Irish, because it's not going to happen. Free Palestine. Evan, get in here.
Hi.
How are you, pal?
I'm so sorry.
Yeah, shit happens. But you're here now. We can have a little powwow before the night is out.
I'm so sorry.
Well, listen, I mean, first you go to Matt Gaetz. Now you're coming to my show. I mean, you're moving up in the world here, pal. It's all good.
Yeah, no, I got the time zones messed up. So I'm still doing this all myself. You know, I don't have anybody helping me or anything.
Well, you're doing really good. But are you really are you a good drummer, lady? I think is the question.
I'm okay. I can drum. I'm a musician. I play music. I need to scoot back maybe a little bit. I'm not used to
you look fine.
No, it's the mic. Am I distorted or can you hear me okay?
No, you sound good. I'm using one of those blue microphones. This is my trusty toy.
Oh, I have one of those too. Yeah.
It's great. Oh, yeah. And I don't have to put it in front of me. It picks up the sound. You know, all that is really, really good.
Yeah.
I wanted to obviously catch up, and we'll do another podcast in the near future as well. You know, cover more stuff.
Yeah, it's so hard when you're managing these. I don't have a helper or anything. I'm just,
I think the best thing that we can cover that I think is important here is obviously you saw what happened with the DNC chair convention. You saw how all of this stuff has unfolded over the last few days. You obviously were knee deep in this stuff for the longest time. My question to you is, how can the Democratic Party be so naive as to what's going on right now? How do they just pretend like the system is not crumbling beneath its feet? And they're going to double and triple down on what they've been doing for the last few years. It's almost like they really are trying to go the way of the Whigs. Tell me I'm wrong.
You're not wrong. But I will say, I think, you know, I reached out to someone recently that still speaks to me from my old life and just kind of asked them, like, what the fuck? I'm seeing all of this weird messaging. And I wasn't surprised at all when I saw the Jamie Harrison get on stage and say that they needed to nominate a person that was an ex because they already had 2 males and 2 females. I don't know if you probably saw that clip or already played it. And because I've been following the accounts that people running for the last month or so, 2 months, and this is the kind of messaging that they're still using. And when I reach out to someone I know that's in the party that still speaks to me, and he was just like, well, you know, the reason is there's 2 different reasons. Half the people still really believe in it. Okay. Like they are just true believers and they don't understand wokeness and they don't understand why it's such a turnoff to regular people. They just really don't. They don't live in Florida. They don't live in Missouri. They live in San Francisco. They live in New York City. They live in Brooklyn. They think it's the right thing to do. Okay. They don't care, quite frankly, if people in the Rust Belt don't like it. And the other half of them, well, they are just trying to pander to the 497 people that basically control and get to pick who the DNC chair is. Did you know that the DNC chair is just voted on by like a couple hundred people? So those 497 people are absolutely insane. Like they are the activist, out of touch class, right? That still truly believe these things. And they just don't have a handle on how the rest of the country feels. And even if there's some doubt that's creeping into their minds, they will push that down and they will push that aside because, as you know, Democrats have this obsession with virtue signaling and with appearing moral and appearing superior and like they are good. They want to be seen as good. And they don't care if it alienates and infuriates other people because those people aren't good. Those people are bad.
Yeah, it's like thought control. It's like 1984.
That's the psychology of these people. And yeah, it is like 1984. You and I just saying this, if they were here, they would say that we were bigoted, that we were racist, that, you know, we have privilege that we don't understand.
Yeah, but you see, I've dealt with people like this before. You know, when Jen ran for Congress against Wasserman Schultz, there was a contingent of these fucking morons in Fort Lauderdale, and they, you know, would attack her, and as a cis white woman and this and that, and it's like, I went right after. I'm like, are you this big of fucking losers? Like, is this really what your life is about? But for me, the reason I am able to do that and I don't care is because I'm not trying to get a job in the party. I'm not trying to be part of this club. Yeah. I actually have a life. And my motivation is to help working people because they've been fucked over and fucked up for far too long. And this system is crumbling beneath our feet every day. And to be blind to that is just deliberate on their part. And that's why they want to live in these like protective bubbles. There was a video of them dancing after they elected Ken Martin. And then Ken Martin comes out and says, we're going to get the money from the good billionaires. You know, the good billionaires are going to give us money. As far as I'm concerned, that should be a running joke forever. It really should. So I would ask Ken this, and I would ask you this. So does that mean that Mr. Elon Musk, who was a substantial donor of the Democratic Party for many years, is he a good billionaire? Or is he bad now because he's with Trump?
He's bad right now.
Yeah. How about Jeff Bezos? You want to talk about one of the biggest billionaire donors of the Democratic Party? I've got a better one. I've got an even better one since you're in California. How about the Resnicks? You know, the water monopolists of California?
Yeah.
Biggest party donors of the Democratic Party in California?
No, they're great.
Are they good billionaires, even though they have completely destroyed the water supply in California?
Right. Good. So good billionaires to them are just people who give them money. You know, like that's basically it. And that's why it makes it so laughable when you've got Joe Biden coming out on, you know, his final speech to the nation. And he says that he's warning against an oligarchy. Well, the oligarchy has been here for years. And it's just, this is when I first came out and posted that video back in August that led me on this crazy journey that's led me to talking to you right now. That was one of the things that infuriated me so much about the party is that I worked in fundraising. So what I did was all day is I do call time with people and I'm sure Jen knows all about this. She ran for Congress, right? You have to do call time. And I'd listen to these I'd listen to these candidates, and I worked in progressive fundraising. Okay. But I'd listen to them and they would get on the phone and they'd talk about the Koch brothers and then turn around and call and beg, you know, Alexander Soros for money. And it was just such a constant hypocrisy. There was just so much hypocrisy that was constantly going on that over time it wore me down. It chipped away at my soul. And I just couldn't do it any longer. And I feel like this is all sort of coming to the surface. And what I saw through all my years in fundraising, maybe the American people will finally start to see now too, with these ridiculous statements like we only take money from good billionaires, not bad billionaires. There's now suddenly an oligarchy when there wasn't one before. Like, of course there was one before. And what befuddles me is that they think the American people don't see through it. The only people that don't see through it are the people who live in San Francisco and Brooklyn, the same people that are talking about, you know, the gender X and wokeness and are still perpetuating all of this crazy identity stuff. So I don't know. I mean, I've said this to many people already. I think that the Democrats are going to lose in 2028. I think that they're going to continue on with this stuff. For everybody who thinks that DEI is dead or that wokeness is dead, I don't think it is at all. I think it's coming right back. I think it's coming back more forcefully and with a vengeance. And I think that they're going to have to lose again in 2028. And that's going to be the only way for those people to finally be expelled from the party. What do you think?
I don't think it matters. I think there's a reason why, if I'm reading this correctly, that David Hogue was picked as the vice chair of the DNC. I have said time and again, obviously what happened in Parkland was a tragedy, but Parkland is one of the most affluent suburbs of South Florida.
Mm-hmm.
We have a lot of gun violence in South Florida, but they cared a lot about these school kids because it was in an affluent community, and this kid saw an opportunity to ascend the political ladder, and he's been doing it ever since 2017.
Okay.
He does not give a flying fuck about any of these issues. He was dead silent when Jen was running against Wasserman Schultz both times.
Mm-hmm.
You care about your future? No. I mean, you care about your own future, but you're talking about the future of working people and millennials and Gen Z.
He can't even relate to that. He has no perception or concept of what that even means.
He comes from a wealthy family. He went to Harvard, and now he has a prestigious job, apparently, within the Democratic Party. So yes, there's a reason why somebody like David Hogue gets picked for a position, and somebody like AOC, who came in as a radical, if you want to call her that, got her mind right, kissed as much ass as humanly possible, and even that wasn't good enough, that they handed it over to a guy who not only has cancer, but looks like he's going to succumb to it over the course of this next 2-year congressional period. Representative Connolly was apparently suffering from some type of a blue hue to his skin the other day, which means that he's having severe blood circulation problems. And when you have cancer, again, it eats at your body. It eats it, and it's eating at his esophagus, I believe is where he has it. And so it's just a reflection in many ways of how far they've sunk and how much further they're willing to sink. I just don't know if enough people have recognized that we have to move away. Electoral politics matters. No question that it does. But this idea that you need to be fighting within the two-party system in order to have your impact, it's not true.
Yeah, I agree.
If you care about left populism, then the movement is with labor. That's where it's at. There are things that Trump will do well as president. There's also things he's going to do terribly, including what he's going to do to the one possibly positive thing that Biden did during his presidency, and that's improvements of the NLRB. And they're going to strip him blind completely, going to do everything they can to break any type of labor movement, however limited it is. Biden was the first president since Reagan to break a labor strike. That will never be forgotten.
Yeah, he broke the railroad strike, right?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
But I like Sean Fain and I like Sean O'Brien.
And what do you think of his labor secretary pick, Chavez Jarimer? She's supposed to be pretty pro-labor for a Republican.
Probably the best pick that he's made so far.
Yeah.
And we'll see what ultimately unfolds. But the fact is, Trump is not the person that the MAGA. You see, I get so fucking sick and tired of people. And this is the thing I despise about liberals. It's much like the Israelis with the Palestinians. Liberals truly believe that they're just better than conservatives.
They do.
That we're morally superior. We're more intellectually superior. Well, maybe by your standards, you might think that you are. But in fact, it makes you worse, because at least people who are conservative, there's at least some humility to them.
Yeah, it's interesting. I've entered these more right-wing circles in the last couple of months of my life, and I find that when I disagree, because I didn't vote for Kamala Harris. I voted for Donald Trump this election. I don't know if you knew that or not. You told me
that in private, but
I'm still an independent. I could, it doesn't mean that I vote GOP now or anything. It's just, I thought he was the better choice this election. And so, that being said, I've gone into these more right-wing circles and I've had discussions and conversations, and like my core beliefs, my core values haven't changed just because I voted for a Republican. Like, I still want some form of universal health care. I have a genetic illness, a disease that I've had my entire life, and it's made me sick, and I've been on Medicaid, and I've also been without health insurance and being a very sick person and being poor, and
sucks, doesn't it?
It's a really scary place to be. Yeah. And I'll never, ever, ever forget it. And so that's just something that I can never budge on. And I talk to people that are right wing and I tell them this. And I've never been called the B word. I've never been called the C word. I've never been called a racist. Nobody's ever personally attacked me for expressing that belief or that opinion. They'll ask me questions about it like, oh, well, how do you think we could pay for something like that? Or do you really think that, do you think we'd be able to pay doctors? Like they have questions that I don't always like agree with their line of thought, but they're just, I don't know if it's they're more emotionally mature. And I'm not saying this will continue to be the case. I'm sure at some point I'll run into some human out there that is on the right that acts like a leftist towards me or something. But by and large, in these circles, when you express a different viewpoint, there is not this automatic hostility and finger pointing the way that sorry, I got a little distracted.
Yeah.
The comment, cool, thanks for following me, Tony D. There is not this this finger pointing and the way that there is on the left, and this automatic ostracization that occurs. And it's been so refreshing. Again, I'm not a Republican now. I am really excited for Donald Trump, and I think he's going to do some really great things.
Oh, we're going to do a lot of great things. It's going to be really great.
One of the things that kept me from voting for Trump is I didn't want him to try to overturn the ACA like he did the first time around. And he's made a campaign promise not to do that. And just yesterday, I saw him talking to the press about Doge. And one of the questions was, are you going to defund Social Security, Medicare, and Medicaid? Because that's been, when you and I have actually talked about this privately before too, and he assured, no, absolutely not. Those are precious programs. We're not going to touch this. No, they won't. And that is the key difference between Donald Trump as a Republican and I think like prior Republican presidents that we've had, like George W. Bush, who did launch a campaign to privatize Social Security, back in 2004. So, I think.
The thing, and I wanted to throw in a thought that I think you would definitely want to hear, would want to comment on, and that is the best thing that Trump has done so far as president, in my opinion, is he has now excommunicated as many as 50 national security advisors led by John Brennan, John Bolton, and James Clapper. Their security clearance has been completely revoked. They cannot come to the White House or the U.S. Capitol anymore. And what was so amazing about that is this is the one like universally positive thing. No ifs, ands, or buts about it. If Trump has done anything to the GOP, and we certainly hope that he has, is that he's killed neoconservatism.
Yes.
And if that is the case, then Ilhan Omar came out today and lauded Trump for making this decision.
I saw that.
And then, of course, you have one of the biggest Dem consultant grifter motherfuckers out there in Aaron Rupar, who I'm sure you know pretty well, decided to comment how Ilhan is sucking up to Trump in his roundabout way of trying to defend John Bolton. And I'm thinking, yeah, there's liberals who will eat this shit up and think that he's right.
Isn't it crazy? I was just on this other show and they were talking about the Maha movement and just how it's so wild because 15 years ago, eating healthy and having healthy foods was like a liberal point of view, right? And all of a sudden, just because Donald Trump has nominated RFK Jr., liberals have completely relinquished those values from their belief system. They're like suddenly like, no, we don't want to make food healthy. We don't want to talk about vaccine efficacy. Like we don't even want to go near those things. No. And it just shows the level of derangement that the people on the left have about Trump. It's like, good for Ilhan Omar for lauding him and saying that he did a good thing, because that is a good thing that he did. And there are just so many people on the left that won't see nuance and will just automatically take the opposite position of whatever Donald Trump is doing. And I think it's freaking sad.
It is sad, but you know what? If we can think back to what it was like about 10, 12 years ago,
right?
One of the best things that the Obamas did as president and it was specifically Michelle Obama, Michelle Obama's in fantastic shape. And she was somebody who was encouraging kids to eat right and exercise. And I can distinctly remember the conservative right, specifically Ted fucking Cruz.
Oh, yeah.
Mr. Beer Belly Texan himself going after her saying, how dare you ask my kids or these kids to be healthy? They can do whatever they want. They can eat whatever they want. You can't take these big gulps away in school. And I'm thinking, this is the shit that should drive everybody.
Right.
Nuts.
It should drive. Yeah. Everybody should be on board with this, bipartisan.
Michelle, yeah. If Michelle,
let me push back. Yeah, there was outrage. Yeah, it was politicized. That's politics. People just take the opposite point of view of their enemy or whatever. But this election and Democrats doing that with RFK actually had a consequence for them because they lost millions of potential Maha voters that went and switched to Donald Trump. There was a major political cost to just writing off those ideas. We
probably both know Jeffrey Rose, and he's somebody I've met, and I know he's a big fixture in that movement, and he's done very well for himself. And he was always with the Democrats, like always with them. And he's with Bobby, and then he was with Trump. And there's a lot of people out there who are just like him, and they're not going back to the Democrats. That's not happening.
Yeah, I saw this Republican. He said something to me the other day on Twitter, and he was like, oh, after this election cycle, they'll just go back to the Democrats. Like, we're not going to give them everything they want. And I'm thinking, well, that's stupid. Why would you say that? Because they just gave you the coalition that you needed, And so, but also, it's just, I don't think that they would anyway. I think we'd be more likely to see some sort of some viable third party option or something form if that were the case.
Well, the problem is that with the third party movements in this country, I think Angela McArdle really did a masterful job in getting what she felt she needed to get in terms of political negotiation out of Trump. And it worked. And Trump, right off the bat, gave the pardon to Russ Ulbricht. And there's probably other elements of libertarianism, particularly, look, Bernie is the most popular senator, but if you were to take out AOC's kind of like Taylor Swift type of popularity in politics and really put it to brass tacks about, who's the most principled representative in the United States Congress, the person is Thomas Massie. And to me, it's not even close. Yeah. And there's a guy who, while I don't agree with everything he stands for, I know that guy is not bought, and I know he's principled, and he does not go along to get along. In fact, he votes with the progressives in many instances, especially as it relates to endless war and civil liberties. We need more representation like that. The problem is we have reached the point of no return with how much corporate special interests have completely engulfed our party. You and Chris Cuomo did the mea culpa at the convention to basically say, if you think it can happen, it can't. They won't allow it because the people that are in those luxury suites, they run everything now. And I mean everything. They really do. And so how we can get past that mindset of, well, the GOP is like this, or that's done. It's done. We have to evolve now.
The paradigm has shifted.
So will people evolve is the question. That's the question that's in front of us. I know you and I have. The question is, have enough people figured it out yet? I hope that enough people are going to see the buffoonery of Jamie Harrison followed by Ken Martin, and that will just be another signal that this is not changing. In fact, it's going to get worse. So it's time for us to put our partisanship differences aside and recognize that this is a class war, nothing more.
Yeah.
And if we can get to that consensus, there's a hell of a lot more people out there that agree with us than don't. In fact, it's probably an overwhelming majority of people that feel the way that we do. There's just an outsized amount of privileged people that find their way into politics. It's kind of like Shannon Watts with action.
Can't stand her.
But when you are a wealthy city dweller like she is, who doesn't have a care in the fucking world other than I am going to moralize you about the effects of guns in the United States, a person who probably doesn't even know how to shoot a fucking gun, much less own one. Those people have a substantial say in our political arena. They put their money into it. They get their friends involved. They invest in it constantly, and they spend all their time talking about it. I can't imagine that there are people, Evan, that tweet over 200 times a day. I can't tweet 200 times in a month. So to me, that's a big part of it too.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, when I was working in Democratic, and you guys probably saw this with the campaign that you ran, but so many of the people were young kids who had parents that were lawyers or doctors or donors. It was very common, and they had some sort of a social safety, or they had a safety net. They had somewhere to fall back on. They were often on their parents' health insurance plans, so they didn't have to worry about jumping from campaign to campaign, or having to break leases, or get out of apartments, or having deposits to put down and money to move to different cities and stuff like that. And it is created for those types of people, and those are the types of people those are the exact types of people that told Kamala Harris not to do the Joe Rogan show. And do you think the Democrats are going to wake up in the next 4 years, or do you think that they'll just kind of shatter themselves further into oblivion and become kind of an irrelevant party for the next decade, like some are predicting?
No, I think it could be longer than that, because I think that it's a very weird time, because even when the Reagan Revolution happened in 1980, the Democrats still controlled the House. So they didn't completely. That's why everyone, if you're a little younger than I am, but as vague as I can remember.
How old do you think I am, Pete?
I think you're 30.
34.
Okay, so I didn't say older, so you can't get mad at me. I'm going to be 42 very soon.
I'll take it as long as I can. It's good to be. And yeah, you look younger too, actually.
Well, thank you. So there was this relationship that Reagan had with Tip O'Neill, who was the head of the Democratic Party House of Representatives for a long time.
Okay.
Long time. So a lot of these so-called policies that were really terrible under Reagan, and there were terrible policies.
Horrible. I did not like him. The
worst policy under Reagan was probably, there was a couple, but obviously reducing the top marginal tax rate from 72% down to 28% is what allowed for the substantial wealth domination of the top 1% throughout the 1980s. What ultimately led to some slight resurgence was in 1987, when there was the second biggest stock market crash ever. It was the biggest market crash since 1929. Yeah. So there was a slight shift, but didn't last, because at that point Reagan was gone. And the other thing that he did was he repealed the Fairness Doctrine. The Fairness Doctrine is what gave us Rush Limbaugh, was what ushered in that entire conservative radio movement that dominated for the next decade. And then ultimately in 1996, Clinton brought forth the Telecom Act, which brought it to television. That's how you got Fox News. That's how you got MSNBC. And what went from 55 national media companies was consolidated into 6. Now we're at 5, and we'll probably be at 4 before we blink an eye. So that's in many ways the Reagan legacy. But the policies that truly destroyed us in so many ways happened under Clinton. That's where normal trade relations with China, NAFTA, the crime bill, Telecom Act, and the best one of all, the repeal of Glass-Steagall. Now, to me, the repeal of Glass-Steagall was the worst one of all, because it completely disintegrated local banking, destroyed it. You can't find local banks today. Community banks, you might find a federal credit union here and there, but they used to be everywhere. These local banks, no. Now it's all TD. Now it's all Bank of America. Now it's all Chase Manhattan, everything. That's what it is. It's all investment banking.
Everything's been consolidated. Yeah.
So you have nowhere to go. And all of these problems that could have been fixed, they're not fixed. They're just getting worse. So I don't really think there is a way to recover. I don't. I think we have to accept the fact that we're heading for the end of our empire. Like, it's inevitably going to end. How we deal with it is going to be the key. If we form some type of a worker revolution that doesn't have to lead to communism, that's the only way we will survive, because all these other nations end up going too far in one direction or the other. They go too far towards fascism, they go too far towards communism, and then you're all fucked. And that's in many ways the whole appeal, because capitalism was failing for decades. And that's why there was this anti-communist movement that was so substantial, because you had the Soviet Union, which was very powerful.
Which was threatening to them. You're right.
Of course. You know, I do not, under any circumstances, condone or endorse communism. But you know what? For a lot of people that cannot survive in the capitalist system, they'll take anything that's different. That's how you end up getting into communism. Because for them, it's like, well, at least I'll have healthcare and I'll have education. I may not make much money, but at least my basic needs will be attended to. And for people that have been failed more often than not within this free market system, which is anything but a free market, it's easy to see how they end up there. It's not that hard. And more people need to realize that. And no matter how much my super conservative libertarian friends think that you can shoot your way out of communism, you can't do it. You cannot continue to think. And when people talk about the printing of money and what that really means, if anybody understands modern monetary theory, it's simply this. You can print that money, but it only ends up in certain people's hands. And that is the wealth consolidation crisis of our time. When you're clogging the drain and the money does not trickle down to everyday people, you're fucked.
Right.
How is somebody worth $200 billion?
It's crazy.
How is somebody worth $1 billion?
$1 trillion.
And you're in San Francisco. So you are in the shadow of these fucknuts that control our economy.
I think living in San Francisco has radicalized me even more to hate the Democratic Party and just liberal psychology and ideology. But yeah, because I've seen the hypocrisy and people that are, a lot of people around here right now are freaking out about deportations and all this stuff. And but the people that are freaking out about it it's not something that really affects them. They're just outraged on behalf of others. And a lot
why
of
don't they
people
ever ask themselves why we have a quasi open border policy? Why don't they ever ask the question?
Well, exactly. And they don't want to because it's uncomfortable. The answer is uncomfortable. And we like having a second class of people. Can you hear me? We like having a second class of people that we can exploit and who we don't have to pay as much. And so a lot of the people around here, they like having cheap gardeners. They like having cheap nannies. They like that there is this second class of people that are undocumented, that don't have social security numbers, that they can take advantage of. And I think that's what it comes down to.
Couldn't agree more. And that is the reality. And the faster we get to a consensus that is what needs to change. If you want a living wage and you want single payer health care, you are never going to get it with an open border policy, because powers that be will always find a way to fuck labor the second they start to get any type of power.
And I get really frustrated because I tell people around here, they don't have the experience of being from the middle of the country. Most of the people, I'm the first person in my family that went to college, but a lot of people that I know back home didn't go to school, and they are competing with illegal immigrants for jobs. And when I tell people hear that, it's like they don't understand it or they don't believe it. They're just like, no, that's just a myth that's made up by the right. There's no way that any illegal immigrant is taking anybody else's jobs. And the reality is that, I've got cousins in Missouri that are unemployed. They've been unemployed for a couple of years. They're not living on government assistance. They're just living with their parents, and they are living off their savings, and they are just, from when they did work at Walmart, and they are incredibly depressed. And can you hear me? Oh, yeah, I see that. Yeah, exactly, Keith. Yeah.
But what's amazing about that statement is that is how they talk.
Yeah.
Well, who do you think is going to pick the berries now? Oh, you're going to go out and do it? Why don't you go out and do it?
Well, I was going to say my cousins would do that kind of work, but they don't want to do it for $10 an hour. They want to do it for $20 an hour.
So yeah, so do it for $10 an hour. So that way you have to live on welfare on top. Just the biggest fuck. They talk about welfare queens in the United States. There is no bigger welfare queen than the Walton family. They're the worst.
Yeah.
You go to work at Walmart for pennies on the dollar, and they tell you to get on welfare as soon as you get the job.
Right. I know. And it's nuts. But yeah, that's been my experience. Yeah, I live in San Francisco. I live in the shadow and the belly of the beast, and these people aren't changing. They are doubling down and digging their heels in and refusing to look in the mirror, and they believe anything and everything that they read on the New York Times or from MSNBC. I mean, it's just they eat it up, and they are terrified and outraged, even though none of the stuff will even hit or affect them. So it's
just remember there's a lot more of us than there are of them, and our responsibility is to get here, as Jen says. Why don't we just pay a living wage to pickers? Then anyone will do it, and it's
right.
true.
Yeah, that's true.
So when you open up the floodgates at the border, you're bringing in desperate people that'll work for pennies on the dollar because wherever they're coming from is not treating them any better. But we bring holy hell to the rest of the world, and very often those are the places that get it the worst. Just like we don't legal drugs, even though we should.
I actually had somebody say to me here once, well, they're going to be exploited in South America, or they can be exploited here. So, why does it matter if they're being exploited?
And big dumb animal, haven't seen you in a while, but you're right. If it's not immigrants doing the work, it won't go to currently unemployed. It'll be prison. Exactly. That's what they do. Prison labor is very popular in California. Why don't you just ask Kamala Harris how popular it is? And they wanted to elect that fuck as president of the United States. Excuse me. They wanted to install that fuck as president of the United States. And I will say this. I do think that she's going to run for governor of California.
I know.
I don't think it's a shoo-in that she's going to win. I think that Butch Ware is going to run on the Green Party ticket. And I also think that there's a chance that Nicole Shanahan is going to run probably as an independent. So it could end up getting very interesting, which it should. I think this is a very unique time. And that's why these conversations, I think, are very important. I consider you part of this coalition. I think we constantly have to be communicating about these key issues every day, because if we do, more and more people are going to see this, and more people are going to realize the fragility of our current system and how it has to change sooner rather than later. The people who are pulling the levers of power, they're not going to change at all. We are going to have to pry it from their cold, dead hands. And the only way we do that is if we form an unstoppable coalition led by labor. If we do that, we might get somewhere. But putting those differences aside is a huge first step. I believe you're a part of it. I'd like to think Jen and I are a part of it. I think our audience is a part of it. There's going to be a big thing coming up on February 22nd. That's going to be with Workers Strike Back. Shama Sawant is leading the effort with Chris Hedges up in Seattle. It's going to be broadcast a whole bunch of different left populist channels, not liberal channels, the channels that actually care about labor. So don't expect TYT, Dave Packman, or any of those guys to be covering it, but we will.
What about Jimmy Dore?
Jimmy probably will cover it. I have my different, the amazing thing
I love Jimmy.
Listen, Jimmy's a fucking asshole, but you know what?
I love it.
He's still right
Yeah.
about a lot of stuff. And for me, I can say that, and I can still say, Jimmy, you want to fight on the issue for working people? I'll fight with you. And that's the way it should be.
Yeah.
But a lot of people are not willing to look at it that way. I am. And I hope more people would agree. I think you do. Guys, Evan's links are in the description. So make sure that you follow her on social media. Also make sure to subscribe to her YouTube channel, because we all want to lift up as many boats as we possibly can. And thank you for obviously coming on our channel, because if you're going to be getting invited on Fox News all the time, heck, we got to compete here, baby. I don't know who else is inviting you, but I certainly hope they do, because you bring a wealth of knowledge and information to the table that I think is extremely important. And I certainly hope you enjoy coming on this show as well.
Yeah, I love it. You guys are amazing. Thank you for having me back. And I'm so sorry I'm late. I feel very bad. So I just messed up the time zones, and I have a 2-year-old, and everything gets a little crazy sometimes.
You could have just said you had a 2-year-old. I would have accepted any excuse.
Yeah.
I call it the terrible twos for a reason. But
yeah, it's rough sometimes. So
well, hopefully this was a little therapeutic for the last 45. But in the meantime, oh, and Kat joined as well. So I'm sure a lot more people from our channel are going to do the same. So
hi,
be
Kat.
well. It's great to see you. Yep. And we will definitely be talking again soon.
Okay. Take care, Pete. Bye.
See you later. So Kat is definitely one of the cool chicks. We really appreciate her. And talking about somebody who comes from the inside, you know, she was part of that Democratic establishment for a long time, and she really knows the score. So with that said, I know we have a couple of more super chats that came in. Got to give a shout out. Chip has been holding the fort down all night long, and he continues. Israel is not an ally. We have no defense treaty with them. Israel refused a defense treaty in 1967. A U.S. defense treaty requires declared borders. Israel is also the only nation that isn't registered as a foreign agent. Man, it would be nice if we could change that. You know who tried that? JFK tried that. I am on the left because government does things that individuals can't and corporations won't. As importantly, government is the only institution that stands between the greed and 90% of the population. Now, under normal circumstances, I would agree with you. But under these circumstances, I don't. For this reason, the government has been bought by corporate special interests. So while in normal circumstances, the government would be a checks and balances on corporate special interests, they're not now. The government is in lockstep with what corporate special interest wants. So how do we get out from under it? That's going to be the real challenge. Tomorrow night, Jen and I will be speaking with one of her former Slate mates, Shania Chowdhury, who was just in Palestine, I believe in Gaza, and the West Bank. And he has plenty to talk about and plenty to share. So we are going to be talking with him first, and then we'll be speaking with Josh Wheel, who is running for the Democratic Party, running with the Democratic Party for U.S. Congress against maybe the biggest scumbag in all of Florida politics, Randy Fine, who has the endorsement of the Donald for some crazy reason. Now, he has the endorsement of the Donald because he is as psychopathic Zionist pro-Israel as it gets. So, you know, thank you, Chip. Appreciate you, my friend. And it's always great to see you. And Big Dumb Animal, mostly watching late, but still keep up with the channel, even when you make me cringe. Well, I'm not perfect, but I am a decent person. So if that is enough for you to throw in a $5 tip, I appreciate it. So does Jen. So does everybody else here. So smash that like button, share, subscribe, do all those things that we ask you to do. I really appreciate you all for being here. See you tomorrow night.